social media and our email campaign, so that folks that aren't here in town or can't make it are watching online, hopefully as well. Our goal is to find some people that can help us, not just help us tonight by giving some feedback, but maybe engage a little bit more throughout the year. We are looking to create an APEX course committee. It's a small committee of folks, in the range of maybe 10 people. And again, we've got people that aren't here tonight that have already raised their hand for this, so we don't have to necessarily have 10 of you, but we'd like to get some help on really looking into what courses we need to submit for our permitting process for 2022, 2023, and we're already thinking about 2024. When I started this process for the 2020 edition, it took me 18 months to get the permitting in place to get the courses done for 2020. So we are literally working a year and a half ahead of time when we start looking at this. We have a fairly solid idea about what our courses will be for 2022. There is some room for change, and I'm sure they will change from kind of what we're thinking. There's still time to do that input, but a lot of the ideas that we have are not going to be used until 2023 or 2024. That's how far out we think. So we're looking for some help. There's a couple of sheets of paper on this long table here. If you have any interest in helping us, please just drop your name and email address on there. We're not going to spam you, and we're not going to put you on some email list that you're going to get something from us every week. But if you have any interest in helping us, that'd be great. The other committee that we're looking to form is not necessarily focused on the trails, but it's a community outreach committee. And so this is the committee that's going to work to do everything we can to push out into the community what we're trying to do. And that's not only the bike race, but that's to do with our outdoor festival, which will take place again in America the Beautiful Park. We want to do that bigger and better. We want to put up posters in bike shops. We want to put posters in cafes. We want to have posters in the gym about people coming down and hanging out, having a beer, watching the racers. We're also very seriously talking about integrating a trail run into next year as well. So bringing in another user group and being part of that. So those are all things that we're discussing. So our goal tonight is to find some people, and it might just be, we're not asking for a ton of your time. If I can hand you a pile of posters and you give those out over over a couple of weeks, on your time, that's great. That's huge. It helps us tremendously. So consider helping out with that kind of thing. A couple of things. Sean from Trails Inn, thank you for opening tonight for us. Really appreciate it. Which normally they're closed, so they open for us. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Chris Murray, Elevation Wheels, take care of our live stream tonight. And Daniel Matheny, he's going to talk a little bit too. He's our course director. You guys all know him. He's going to talk a little bit tonight. Come on up and talk a little bit about the process as well. Very quickly, before I get into the race, I also want to, all of you know our hometown presenting sponsor, Sram RockShox. I want to say thank you. We've got Molly, we've got Chris from Sram and RockShox. If you want to come up and just say a couple of words, just like to let them do that. They have been our presenting sponsor for the last couple of years and just re-upped. So they'll be moving forward with us. We're really proud to have them. So thank you, Mom.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. It is exciting to be able to talk about what 2022 is going to look like at the Apex. We have been a part of this race for its first 2 years and are excited to continue to sponsor and support. For all of you guys who have been out there and have been on the course and have raced this thing, we really want our participation to look different this year. Sram and RockShox is taking a new initiative to really give back into this community and to really start investing in ways that we haven't before. So we want you guys as locals to feel that presence and to feel supported by your local mountain biking company. So As a thank you, we've got a bunch of beanies tonight, little Sid Man beanies, keep you guys warm throughout the winter. Please come and grab one. I also brought my bike that is featuring the new RockShox Flight Attendant electronic suspension damping system. So if you have any interest in asking questions, I will gladly talk to you about how much fun I've been having on that thing testing here in Colorado Springs. So, and it's legal in the race course, I heard. So if you want more fun on the downhills and faster uphill times, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, we're really excited to have you guys here and for your attention for just a couple of minutes. And I look forward to activating some really fun experiences here in this community going forward. So thank you guys.
Okay, so as you know, we've talked about this before. The Pikes Peak APEX is a nonprofit event. It is owned by the Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization here in Tenon. The money that's made from this event goes into the Trail Stewardship Fund that PPRA runs. And all of that money goes right back into the trails here in the Pikes Peak region. It builds new trails, it maintains existing trails, and it allows all of us that actually live here all year long to ride on some of these trails and have some upkeep. And Priscilla actually oversees our Trail Stewardship Fund. She's our chair for that, so she's here tonight as well. For example, I just want to give an example of what happened in 2021. We put in $20,000 back into the trail system, and that was through other organizations. Renfee got some money, Medicine Wheel got some money, there were some friends groups that got some money. The largest chunk was a $12,000 donation to Colorado Springs Parks and Rec to get the new Daniels Pass Sweetwater Canyon trails going. Has everyone ridden those already? Everyone had a chance to ride those? We put $12,000 from the Apex into those trails. And again, that's not the majority of the money. It was an expensive project, but we continue to be proud to be able to put money into trails where all of us can ride every day. So that's what this event is about. I kind of mentioned a list of groups that we need to permit with, and we go through that. Now I'll tell you a little bit about what that process looks like. We start with the Forest Service. The Forest Service. They already have an idea of where we're looking for 2022. We've already had that conversation. We actually started that conversation last May. And I had another conversation here in the last few weeks. I have to turn in our final request at the beginning of February. So again, one of these goals, this trail group that we're talking about, this committee that we're going to have, we're going to try to have that group meet 4 times between now and February. And it might be online, it might be in person. It just kind of depends on how we want to do it. Daniel's going to help us by kind of heading up that group. You can talk about that in a few minutes. And we're going to kind of come up with some ideas on what we want to turn into the Forest Service to use. You can see from our past areas, we're fairly confined to system trails within the Forest Service. So when we talk about system trails, if you've ever taken a look at a Forest Service map, we're limited to what's on that map. You're absolutely right. There are some amazing trails that are not on that map. And they've been built by a variety of different groups over the last several decades. We're not allowed to go on some of those. I mean, I can give you an example of, when we went to Monument this last year, everyone's like, why are you just climbing Mount Herman and then just doing 315? And there's like 18 great things. Like, why are you going the wrong way down Limbaugh Canyon? You should be going the other way. It's like, well, if we went the other way on Limbaugh Canyon, we'd end up in a residential area. It's the only legal trail we can take out of it. Everyone's like, well, take White Ghost. White Ghost doesn't exist. It cuts through private property. It's not on the map. It's maintained by somebody, but we are not allowed to use that. And we're permitting an event, we're kept kind of at that. We can only use, these trails that are completely, usable to us. Um, Also, a few of the other roadblocks. Forest Service will not permit anything that uses Bar Trail. Bar Trail, the number of permits that are on Bar Trail are used up by the Ascent Marathon. So any situation to use Bar Trail is completely off the table. They have not permitted a new event there in over 8 years, and they're not expecting to do so anytime soon, if ever. So that's another piece. I'll give you another example. I would love to figure out how to use Lake Moraine. Like, why not? Beautiful trail built by a number of organizations several years ago. Lake Moraine Trail crosses an area that's considered South Slope, and it goes into CSU property. CSU is under a policy that does not allow any commercial use of that South Slope area for anything. And we've kind of like pushed that up the chain, and literally have been told from the CEO that the only way we'll be able to use Lake Moraine Trail is if Colorado Springs City Council changes the law to allow us to actually use that trail. And just to be clear, that's not stopping us. We're literally talking to City Council about trying to figure this out. We're actually trying to get someone elected to City Council. So if anyone sees that election coming up, we have someone that's actually a board member of Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance who is trying to take that empty seat on City Council. So if you guys vote, I don't like to get political, but vote for Toby Gannett. He's on the PBRA board, and he's going to help us with some of this stuff. So they're just, I just kind of wanted to give you guys an understanding of the level of some of the stuff that we deal with on this. The other piece is Colorado Springs Parks and Rec. Some of the trails that we've got in city parks, I mean, it's actually quite unbelievable. And you guys know here, so you guys live here, so I don't have to really tell you how amazing it is that most of us can ride out the door and be in Palmer Park, in Ute Valley Park, go down the list, Blodgett, all of these parks that we've got that are right here in town. Austin Bluffs Open Space is opening up. All of these trails are accessible by us, but a lot of them were purchased with the TOPS program, and TOPS is a percentage of, I think we pay a penny for every $10 we spend in this town goes into a fund that goes to purchase new property and then maintain things on TOPS property. TOPS property includes Blodgett open space, about half of Ute. It includes all of Red Rocks. It includes Chutes and Ladders from Stratton. Thank you. It includes all of Stratton open space. All of those are considered under a conservation easement, and Parks and Rec has never approved a commercial event to go on TOPS property. Now, again, we're working on that. There's a little bit of gray area in some of those rules. We're working very closely with them. Honestly, Parks and Rec has been a fantastic partner of ours, and they are very interested in trying to figure out what they can do to help us because they do believe in what we're doing. So there is a discussion of, well, if we don't start to finish and we just pass through, is that an option? So we're having those conversations now, but are we going to be able to run a full stage and shut down Red Rocks for the day? No, that is not happening. There's no way we can get in there. So I hope that gives everyone a little idea of kind of some of the things that we're running into, and some ideas on why we're hitting some of the roadblocks that that we're going to. Now, opening this up, we've always said we really want to be really close to downtown for all these stages. But maybe we need to explore that. This year we went up to Monument, and people had a good time up there. We were able to use Limbaugh Canyon. We were able to use Lovell Gulch. Many of you know of all those great trails that are kind of in that Monument Preserve area. The only one we were able to use was 715. We actually did a bunch of work groups up there with Medicine Wheel and friends of that open space up there in Monument Preserve to kind of like get 715 right. As hard as it was, to get 715 kind of rival down. So we'll continue to try to work to do that. But maybe we need to consider some things, and this is what this working group will work on. Do we need to work on some things like we need to consider going down to Canyon City? Why not going to Pueblo and doing a stage at the reservoir down there? It's a 45-minute drive to both of those places. We need to think about the people that are coming in from out of town. Do they just fly in? Do they have a rental car? What do they have? Do we need to create a shuttle system? How do we open that up? Those are all things that we should discuss. I think if we're going to get people to drive 45 minutes to a stage, I think it's completely legitimate if it's going to be a good experience. And so our goal is to create, with the APEX, it's to create a great experience for people riding it. And that goes for amateurs and pros alike. We want people to enjoy this event, not just the pro riders. The pro riders will be fine. They're going to go do their thing, and they're going to get their feet up there, and they're going to race, and they're going to win prize money. But honestly, we're trying to build this event around the amateur rider. People that want to just out there and challenge themselves, have a good time with their friends, and feel like they finished something like an Ironman or a marathon or something similar. That's the group we're after. So we're trying to create good experiences for those people. And that's really a big goal of APEX. I'm going to kind of turn it over to Daniel, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the courses that we've had, some of the courses that we're considering, maybe get a little discussion here. If people online want to write something in on Facebook, we're going to try to answer questions that come through on the comments on Facebook. So happy to try to keep up with that. But start a little conversation about what's going on. Don't forget those sheets of paper if you want to be involved in any way. We'd love to have your help. We'll just kind of talk through this. We'll take some questions here and everything else. So, Tina.
Thank you, everybody. I think Micah did a pretty good job of covering most of the stuff. I think his overview was more thorough than what I expected. One thing that I want to reiterate, though, as I don't know if you know, but I've been the course director for the last couple of years, and I don't know if Micah approached me or I heard about it and approached him, but somehow it came to be, and I was super stoked to join up to have a race here in my backyard. I've been, since I moved to Colorado, worked with USA Cycling, done some national events with the collegiate high school programs, been a coach, and still coach full-time with my own business. But whenever I heard of an event here like this, I was like, yes, let's do this. Let's showcase what we have, because I've been all over the place racing personally. And so from a person that comes from the inside the tape, I wanted to get that experience outside the tape with other people. And like he said, there's a lot of things that questions that people come to me and say, how can we use this? And there's a lot of restrictions, but also one of the things that I want to key in on the bat, I try to think, okay, what can we use? What loopholes are there? What processes of vetting to earn that respect of the city, the parks, the different entities? And so that's one thing we've been working on. There's already some challenges from what we've had of what racers did last year and what we did last year in the group that have affected us going into this year. That will obviously change some of our courses. But we're always thinking about those options of what can we do? Like you mentioned, should we go to Canyon City? Should we go to Pueblo? People mentioned going to Buffalo Creek. It's been talked about of doing things as far as Ring Peak, different versions, staying overnight in other places. So this not necessarily the sky the limit, but we're open to ideas of what people are looking for. And one of the questions I wanted to pose to this group, as well as people that may be interested later is, has anybody heard anything of why somebody would do this? Local people in town, your friends, riders, things like that. I know I have my own personal gripes about it, and I'm the one that helps out with it. So I can put some of those out here if you want to hear them. But also, are there reasons why you would come back to the event? That kind of thing. Because we're looking at, why people from here would toe the line in their own hometown, or bring people in from local region, or from a bigger perspective, come here as a bucket list type event. So those are some things we're looking for, because obviously we can't strike the balance for everybody. I love mountain biking. I do it as much as I can. If I could have 100% single track course with nothing else, I would love it. But on the other hand, somebody else would hate that. And so we get that feedback, and so realize that we can't make everybody happy, but trying to hit the user group of the everyday athlete to have that good experience. That's one thing that's in the back of my head every time I'm going out, riding 6 iterations of every course, and even trying to get some of that stuff accessible to the racers. And trust me, I've ridden every trail in opposite directions and every link between there and all the fun road shortcuts between. And that's one thing, if you know who I am or seen any of the rides I do, I like the rowdy as it gets, or I will do something as gravel or as roady as it gets as well. But my preference is one way towards the mountain bike side of things. But we have to have something that works for everybody from that standpoint. So one thing we're looking at doing, and me being involved with the event, I don't want to step on any of the entities' toes, and that involves the official entities of Forest Service, parks, anything like that. Like, we don't want to get in trouble with cutting a new trail or using something we're not supposed to, because then if we do that, we're not going to be permitted the next year. Nobody gets to do anything. But also, on the other hand, there are lots of trails out there that could exist in the future, and that's the line we're trying to walk, is how can we get more access for everyone and navigate that process going forward. So having a trail committee to do that involves getting people from like Team Telecycle in Woodland Park and the people that are building trails up that way and maintaining stuff in Lovell Gulch and Rampart Range, all that kind of stuff. The same thing with Monument Preserve, Fireworks Center, all the different entities like PAR down in Canyon City, who's doing the work and actually how to get involved in that stuff. Because if we get those people involved, we don't want to necessarily shut down the work they're doing if they're getting new trails out there. But if we can, then recognize we have access to them. An example is Palmer Park. It has the caretaker, Nate, in there is great to work with. And a lot of that stuff is he realizes this trail is on the map, but nobody uses it anymore. So let's see if we can decommission it and make a new one. And it's better for everyone. Not everybody's that way, but that's what we're looking at trying to accomplish with the process of having a trail committee. So my intent of getting that group is having different people from the respective areas to have insight locally, because we can't be in all those places as intricately as people that are located in those spots. So we're trying to get people involved. And the positive side of things is what Mike was talking about. Even though there are some restrictions, it doesn't mean we're seeing those restrictions and stopping. It's, okay, what's the next step to maybe have that change? Or maybe we can run a race through the edge of something that goes in and out of private property or through some of those other properties. If we can get that, then you're going to start seeing a lot more variations to some of the courses, and that's my intent, because we want to have something where we can race start to finish and have a fun, awesome, cohesive experience. And obviously, we're trying to hit the bell-shaped curve, and that's not going to be the same for everybody. So those are some hurdles and obstacles that we deal with, and one of them is like kind of the environment, because a lot of when we propose these, they're looking at erosion, they're looking at on the stuff on 667 Jones Park area, the fish, which that's one of the things is frankly a frustration, but it's also they've already been sued. The Forest Service has been sued in the past for certain things going on in that region because of that conservation. But it's things we have to tread lightly on, because if you've noticed, the event puts up bridges on 6 different crossings up there. And they're up there for that event only. So we put them up, take them down, and that's only for our event. But there's people riding. Yeah, and there's people riding on that stuff, motos, hikers, ATVs, all that kind of stuff, bikers, every day out of the year, but we have to put stuff up there. Like we go through that extra hoop that we're required to do. So there's a lot of things like that that are challenges that we're like, okay, we're going to hear that. Let's go through the process and make it happen so we can run the event. But it always doesn't mean that we've achieved the goal of what they want. So there are those challenges. But we have to be etiquette to it. Like what Micah said, some of the trails that we would like to use just don't exist in people's eyes. But is there a way to work with these different entities to see if we can get them to exist officially, so we might be able to use them in the future? Some of that stuff has already happened at Palmer Park. That's an easier one because it's here in the city, but it's like, they built new trail for the event, so we could actually have access points and things like that. We made it a little bit better, even though they're short and small. Those connections are meaningful. All that chips away at the bigger picture. So that's the intent with the trail committee, is getting together intensively immediately, like starting in the new year. So we can actually have feedback from those entities of where we may want to have events. So if you know of anybody in those groups, like say Monument, Mount Herman area, Gulch, even down in Canyon City and that stuff, like have some connections down there, different entities, we want to have good representation across the board so we can present stuff in the scoping meeting and be approved or at least be narrowed down, because we obviously taking almost a shotgun approach of let's get everything out there that we can consider. Usually people come back to us and narrow it, and then we go back to them saying, like, can we have any leeway of what we can have access to? It's a kind of an ongoing process. And then from that point, maybe less intensive of a feedback, but monthly meeting, something like that, to kind of get together, even going out and riding some of these trails. So it's not all just sitting behind, a computer or doing that kind of stuff. It's, I've even had people coming to me and saying, hey, I've got an idea for the, a new prologue in Palmer. So it's like I've written two different groups of saying, this is a different variation you could do. And it's like, I'm so confused in Palmer now because I've got 10 different iterations of the prologue, even though we're using the same one. But we're open to those ideas. So, I'm a rider for the rider for the racer as well. So it's like I want to see what most people have insight on what they want to use as far as trails, and if we can gain any more access without shutting things down. Because the last thing I want to happen as a rider myself is to go and try to request something that's not on a map, and that brings it to the attention of the powers that be, and then it gets shut down. Like that's my biggest concern as the other 52 weeks of the year. I'm riding that stuff too, as well as the APEX courses. Most other people are too. But I don't want to get that shut down. So I'm going to walk a fine line of trying to get access to things, but also be respectful for the different user groups that are involved. So anything else?
Did you want to kind of go through some of the things that we're looking at next year?
Courses?
Yeah. Just kind of give a couple of things.
Oh, yeah. We're still looking at, there's lots of good options. We've had lots of great, I'll just kind of go down the list as far as like courses and things like that. Palmer Park is one of those things where it's a bowl of noodles when you look at it on a map. So we can have iterations galore in there. But one of those things with Palmer is that I've noticed is having somewhat of the same course. People talk about the same features, can compare their times year to year, that kind of stuff. So there is a draw to keep it the same. There may be variations and iterations based on what the caretaker in the park wants us to use, but we're constantly considering trying to make it better. But that's one of those where we like that course. We have a good relationship there. It doesn't mean we can't go away from that. There are other options with new trail being built in University Village and Austin Bluffs open space area and stuff like that. Even though there is some private and tops up stuff in there, we just have to kind of skirt around. But mainly, we're still looking to keep the format somewhat the same, with that first day being a short prologue when people start coming in and they can do a short day and then lead into the more longer backcountry days. We've always had Air Force Academy on the list. Last year, we got pulled out the week before. I also sponsor as a coach the COS Racing Group, and the same thing happened with the road event, which was state championships. And both events got pulled consecutively, week to week. They were back to back, and not many people knew it. But the thing is, that's always been on our list. Monument, Mount Herman, Rampart is still on the list in the scoping. We've got ideas, not necessarily using bar, but we considered Elk Park and somewhat of trying to get across Lake Moraine with some unique ideas. So if I saw some eyes like, well, what's that? Yes, it would be a very unique stage, but we're not closed to ideas from that standpoint. We're looking at using some of the new trails that have been built from Daniels Pass and Sweetwater as well, to add on to basically somewhat of the stage 3 and stage 4 days, to use some of those options that now exist across there and crossing the canyon. So we have more flexibility with that. And actually, my intent is actually to use a little less of Gold Camp Road and use a little bit more trail. So any chance we can, that's my intent as course director and designer, is like try to get as much of the dirt use as we can versus the other stuff. So those are some options. I know one of the suggestions, and I was like, whenever the event put this stuff out there on social media, I tried to look at some of the comments because those are where some good feedback come from sometimes. People aren't trolling. But one of the suggestions was having different events or different categories. And I think it's a good idea. Like coaching athletes, I see all levels of beginner, intermediate, advanced. Some people want the huge challenge, even though they may not be ready for it, but that's fine if you just get through it. But one of the suggestions was having alternating categories where it's like a husband-wife or a duo or things like that, because they may not want to do all stages. And I sympathize or empathize with that, because it's like some people just aren't ready for it. I coach a lot of juniors, and I'm like, that's why we kind of tried to open up one-day events, which in having a conversation tonight, we've done that the last 2 years, and one of the major players at a bike shop in town did not even know we had one-day categories. So we're doing a poor job of promoting that you can race in Palmer Park for like $25 on the first day, and that's it. Not many people knew that. You can race the Queen Stage on Saturday as a one-day event. So those options, we're trying to lower the bar where, even though it's promoted as an APEX stage race, you can still do it as a single-day event. I work with a lot of high schoolers, and that was the same thing. It's like, you want to come out, obviously you're at school, so if you want to come out on Saturday and do a race, it's probably more developmentally sound to do one day versus, a 4-day stage race for a junior. So from that standpoint, we're looking at ideas to make it more inclusive, get more people out. Maybe it's a 4-person team where one person does, a day each of them. But obviously, it's the same number of users that we have on the train. So those kinds of ideas hopefully get your mind going with how we're open to things, how we're looking at making it a race for the users, and also all different types of abilities. So that covered somewhat of the.
It's pretty good. Bring the peak is obviously a goal. Maybe we stop.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about Bring the Peak. I don't know, 2.5 years now since I've been involved in some of those ideas. And from that standpoint, Bring the Peak, there would basically be more of a gravel race at this point. But making that push towards, can we make Bring the Peak a proper mountain bike loop with less amount of 8 miles on the main road once you drop out on the backside of Pancake Rocks. Pancake Rocks was shut down this year because it crossed a small amount of private property. It was opened back up. So there's all kinds of things that exist. But if we continue to push, there's been some amazing discussions, and I'll kind of share this here, of behind the meetings that I've had that blew my mind. I was like, there's been discussions of single track being built up to Rampart Range, like up Rampart Range Road and down Rampart Range Road, or crossing Highway 24 from Waldo Canyon after it's rebuilt with a bridge over to Ute, Indian. There's all kinds of things that have been discussed that are plans or big picture things that a lot of people don't know about that would have had a huge connectivity to our trail network in this region. That if we can get everybody together, and this being a nonprofit event with stewardship behind it, if we can get that process rolling and keep it engaged, there's lots of things that could happen. But obviously, as you know, it takes a lot of money to move land and keep it together. So from that standpoint, that's what we're encouraging, is the longevity to make some of this stuff come to fruition. So those big plans are, make my eyes light up whenever it thinks about, oh yeah, we could actually connect some of this stuff to make a big, huge trail network.
What do you want to just take? What do we, you can hear because I think it's probably best.
Why don't we just open it up a little bit, and maybe people can kind of raise their hand and ask some questions about, have we thought about this? maybe we have, maybe we haven't. And we'll kind of think about some of this as we move forward. But happy with any ideas or comments that you might have. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dan Spearis. Pikes Peak APEX last year was my first mountain bike race on the 52.
Nice, first mountain bike race.
This year was my third mountain bike race on the cover.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty badass like it is. I think it would have been great to have done the 1,000 road, which would be kind of, screwed out of that 2 years in a row, no big deal. So I think it's actually awesome. It's a great challenge for me. I've had friends coming down from Tennessee to do it. I prefer Rampart Reservoir to Limbaugh Canyon, whatever, but I'll do whatever you put on the menu. So bring it.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Can folks online hear that? Okay.
Yeah, it's actually fun.
Okay. Great. So, appreciate that feedback. I know we when we did polls for the first year, Rampart Range Loop was the least favorite of the three, and it might have had something to do with an 11-mile climb on a dirt road that gained 3,000 feet. It might have had something to do with that. But really, actually like the loop around Rampart Reservoir. I think that's a great piece of single track. A couple of places you got to jump off your bike. Technical, but not crazy technical. There's no way to get there and back without a long stretch of dirt road. So I think we'll eventually maybe bring some of that back. We've also even looked at a stage that actually either starts in Monument and finishes in Guard of the Gods, or vice versa, where we could go up and do the loop and then actually cut across on a couple of little spots where and kind of get over to our Friday course this year, and maybe even tie in Rampart Reservoir and Limbaugh Canyon and come in. So there's some discussions on that. We got to figure out how to move people back and forth from start to finish. But that's a way to loop both of those Friday courses together. So that's a conversation.
Thanks. On that last note, could you do Rampart Reservoir from Field Park?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and we wanted to avoid racing down Rampart Range to Guard of the Gods. We think that's a bad idea. And so that's unfortunate because, it's a solid, 25 minutes, 25 minutes down. But as Daniel just alluded to, but as Daniel just alluded to, there's this Waldo Canyon master plan that has a ways to go. I think it's going to be 3, 4, even 5 years before we see that completed, something like that. You're shaking your head. Priscilla knows better than I do. But there's a discussion about literally making single track parallel to Rampart Range Road all the way down, which would be amazing. We could climb it, we could down it. It would be unbelievable. We wouldn't need to cut through on Williams Canyon. Not that that trail exists, but the trail does not exist. Anyone else?
Can we use that?
No.
Is anybody wanting to?
I don't even know what that trail is.
So as long as we're talking about that area, I'm trying to piece the pieces together in my mind. You mentioned how Park is Catamount, totally out of.
No, North Slope's on. Okay,
So
North Slope is a possibility. We got to find a way to get there.
Yeah. So one of my gripes this year, or last year, was the disconnected finish lines. Really left us with no fans, no cheering, kind of a tight finish.
Yeah.
You gotta to fix that somehow, and not have that some of these starting to finish areas.
Yeah.
So Catamount, 8 miles up the highway, that's a mile into Allen Park, which has some great possibilities. Have you looked at some of the moto trails at 717?
We don't know 717.
717 is very popular. Moto trail, pretty fun and all.
It's not a wood in the park. The problem with 717 anymore is it's
Sorry,
got
Brett from CMTRA, by the way, our one of our moto officials. Thank you, Brett's team, for helping out with that. Go ahead.
I think the problem with 717 would be how to manage all the other users that would be wanting to run it
when you're running your event. Captain Jack's isn't so bad. We can control that a little bit with our group being up there. But 717, you get ATVs, you get the side-to-sides. You get some of that trail is on interstate width now. And it would be, I think, more challenging to manage the other user groups that might want to be up there. There's certainly single track up there that no one knows about. We won't talk about that. But if that could ever be used, it would be some really fantastic stuff for you guys. But it doesn't exist.
We can take a look at some of that, though. It's all about connectivity, right? And to be perfectly honest, what we're looking at is actually shuttling everyone up to Glen Cove and then climbing the last 1 mile up to Elk Park and going down. However, at this point, we have not secured permission for Elk Park from Forest Service. And we have not secured permission for the Lake Mine Trail from CSU and City Council. So until we can get those two barriers crossed over, it's going to be hard to get there. And just to be perfectly honest, 8 miles climbing up the pavement on Pikes Peak Highway sounds brutal. As a recovering roadie who's ridden up that road several times on my road bike, I can't imagine going up there on my mountain bike.
But that 8 mile stretch is literally half of the climb.
It is, yeah. It's a long piece, but to your point, Catamount area is being looked at. There is some nice stuff in there. It's considered North Slope, so Forest Service will allow some stuff there, and it is part of our plan to Ring the Peak. I'm trying to figure out how we connect that to Indian Trail, which is El Paso Parks, actually. Interestingly enough, Union Trail goes right along 24. But it dead ends into Highway 24, and then you got to figure out how to get through the town of Cascade. So there might be some more connectivity coming, but it's not quite there yet. We're working on it.
As long as you connect downhill, we can keep up with the cars.
There you go. That's a good point. Roll down. We get.
And our brakes are probably better than theirs are.
and I'm up for crazy ideas. We want to take a lane of 24. Let's take a lane at 24. It's not against the rules. Just costs money. It's a big deal. Go ahead. You had in a blue jacket. Sorry, you raised your hand.
You were talking about Elk Park.
Yeah.
You don't work that.
Down,
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's exactly what we would like to do. That's on our list of wants. And it's a gorgeous day. A little chunky up there on Elk Park, to be perfectly honest. It's gonna push some people, but very rideable for the most part. And I think it would be a bucket list day on the bike. And we should absolutely consider things like that. So totally with you, but I kind of just spelled out some of the barriers we've got there.
One racing last year, one night, I heard people like out of towners complaining about
Yes.
well, for me, it was like, okay, the heck, we get back to the bar now. So I know I read it.
Right.
To be fair, I think, you don't want to kill them.
That was hard. We took the big gravel day and then gave them the 2 miles of the hardest single track of the week, all in one day. But then you talk to some people and it was the highlight of the day. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched Mackie Franklin's video on the Sid and Mackie channel, but he was just like, that was the best part of the whole entire week was that 2 miles. But he's an enduro guy, so.
Yeah, and that's, so you guys know, we battled back and forth on that. Like, even Micah and I was like, I only go up there when I take my big bike, and I'm like, this is like a proper enduro downhill problem. It's just how much do I want to drag the bike up there just to ride it. And
I swept that section
There was lots of blood carnage.
Yeah. And the same thing, I went with one of my course volunteers as well that was helping pull the course, and I didn't know he was coming from the bottom, and I was helping going down the trail. And I think people just got like at wits end pissed because it was like the whole trail I was getting ready to say, Mike, we need to put something out because nobody's littered. It's been great. We get to that section, and it was like honey stinger wrappers, like just, they were like, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm just throwing it down. Like I'm not putting it anywhere. It was like, but then also people that originally said it was like immediately like that was stupid. I'm like, well, it's kind of the unknown name of the trail, but it was also a challenge that once they got past that initial thing of like, I'm impressed I did that and I accomplished it. So I understand that, but one of our limitations was that is the only trail, 715 is the only trail we can use in Mount Herman, Fireworks Center, everything. Like when we scoped it, I said, can we go through here? No, that doesn't exist. Does the Tim Watkins Trail exist? No. All these things that are there are non-usable trail. Not to say that some of those that are there we can't get access to maybe in the future, but most of them, like White Ghost, it's not an inventory trail. And the thing I don't want to do is say, let's get this on the race, and then something gets shut down because of all the work that's went into it.
If y'all do the Elkhorn thing, would that shut down the Queen City? You're not going to do Jones Park twice, are you?
No.
Well, we've been doing Captain Jack's Club.
Yeah.
Somebody's got an online question too.
Okay.
If we get a chance. So
Let me just answer that question. And just to be perfectly honest, there's a little bit of friction with Forest Service on Jones Park and kind of that area that we put the bridges on. And to be perfectly honest, it's actually our plan to not do that course next year. Even though that's a favorite, it's a big favorite. But we've kind of been asked to give that one a chill. There's some issue with, as we all know, with the fish issues. They've been sued over that. There's been biologists up there. There were Forest Service rangers on the race day, kind of up there, kind of watching how that's been going. And we have, from the very beginning, have been asked to spread this event out and not use the same trails every year. So that's one that we've used twice in a row. It's my expectation that we will not use that exact course in 2022. But go ahead and answer that one if you've got.
yeah, we had a question from Facebook Live. I believe it was Julie. She asked if Cheyenne Mountain State Park is an option. We've actually mentioned that. I know personally there was a UCI race when I first moved to town. I think, well, several years after, but maybe 2009, 2010, something like that. The thing we're looking at with this event is more of a central location. When we originally scoped it, we were looking at can we get all of the events for running out in and out of the same start-finish venue, like say America the Beautiful Park and everything roll from there, even from the standpoint of Air Force Academy rolling from that, so we can have more of a central location. And that sounds big, I see the eyes, but it was basically like shutting down traffic to roll up there. And it's not that long, like 30 minutes of a ride up there, but it would be like, how quick can we make it up to Woodman and jump on there? So those discussions have been constantly for the last 2.5 years. With Cheyenne Mountain State Park, it's more like looping, and as the pointy end, as we call it, of the race, the fast riders, we have an issue with an adventure race, the front catching the back if it's a lapping race, and there's only so many miles of trail. So that is one of the things when we look at like isolating in a park, like Palmer Park, we can do it because it's a time trial start. It's one lap and done. Whereas if we do something a bigger day, then we're looking at that possible front to tail catching on lap 1 to lap 2 kind of deal. So that's one thing we have to consider is like the race leaders going for prize money coming up on somebody that's wanting to enjoy their finish for the weekend. So when we're considering the courses where you've got all these different things a way out, I would love to use some of that stuff if there was more of an adventure backcountry loop to make it the length appropriate to not affect it.
That's the biggest loop I've been able to figure out in the state parks, like 10 miles.
Yeah.
And it's like 10 miles is kind of short. In Cheyenne
Mountain State Park, 10 miles is the biggest loop we can figure out. So it's like, okay, could we do 3 laps for a big day? Yes. But now we're talking traffic overlapping, and we're trying, we already did that on the last day, twice in a row now, where the top pros were catching the people on lower Captain Jacks, and it doesn't make a great experience for those people getting caught because they're really having to pull over and stop. And the pros don't like it really that much too. They're like yelling at people to, give them space, and they don't want to yell at people. And so when we start talking about lap traffic, it doesn't create the best experience for everybody there. We're just really trying to avoid that. But we also just talked today. Daniel and I literally mapped out a course. Now again, Air Force Academy is I think, I'll just say less than 50% chance next year. Although don't worry, we're working on hard. But we looked at a course today that would be 34 miles on Air Force Academy that would include 2 laps of Falcon, where the front could not catch the tape. So that is the kind of thing we're looking at, if we can figure it out. Who else?
Go for it.
Yeah, for the line atmosphere, is there any consideration to maybe that one of the gaming days at the top of the high drive instead of the bottom of jacks? So they know jacks, let them come down and then finish right there, but if you're going off the watch, anybody can't get to the parking lot there while the race is going on, there's can't really go off the trail at all, there's people coming in. High drive is a little wider, we can't walk up the short side there, and there's always something that full atmosphere and
I like the idea of that. Just the ideas of having an open mind, because we try to consider what we can. But that's why a committee gives a better, aspect for everybody's thoughts. The difficulty with that is the only parking lot there, and as everybody knows, they've paved it and lined it so that it's not as chaotic, which is good, but also maybe less actual spots. And there's the trail impact for other users. Even though we go out and put a scoping thing that says we're going to be using these that's permitted through all the different entities. When we do that, it doesn't mean the trails are off limits. Like even when Brett's out there with his members of his moto group, he's there because he knows he's probably going to be able to speak to the people that pull up on a Saturday and says like, I'm going to go ride my moto up Jacks. He can probably say to them better, you may not want to do this. You've got 200 people coming down at you. Whereas some dude in spandex saying that, they're like, so not everyone is, but the thing is having their support is key because they can speak to their own user group, even though like some mountain bikers may ride motos as well. When they're out there, sometimes it's more of a battle and a conflict. So we try to look at those, like your point was getting the start finish review in the same area, because it's even difficult because marking it to that point, like people when they're done racing, your mind shuts off. You're like, I finished it, and I'm going to run 3 miles back to the proper finish or something. That's a challenge because the city doesn't want us racing downhill and from the front to the back of, not necessarily racing downhill, on open roads and things like that. Because the start of the group we can control within a close proximity, rolling out of town. But if you're coming back in, that's potentially 3 hours of difference from the start to the finish of first place to last place. So having that amount of road closure, like Micah said, only money, like we could have police out there the whole time, but it gets very expensive because when we do that, we're paying double time for police officers to be on the road, and that would make a pretty deep dip in the budget, basically.
And just to be clear, all these trails that are out there, they're not closed. We don't, like Forest Service won't allow us to shut the trails down to all user groups. All we can do is ask, please don't head up that way. But we've got to remember, there's a lot of user groups on these areas, and those user groups, they all help maintain those trails. You guys probably know this, but all of those trails up there in Jones Park and Captain Jack's, who maintains those trails? It's not the mountain bikers. It's the motos. It's the motor groups. They maintain those trails and we use the heck out of them. So we have a lot of user groups to keep happy, and those relationships have to be good. And as part of our goal with this event is to bridge the gaps with those user groups and make sure that everyone is doing well.
Yeah. There's a couple more online live questions.
Okay.
So one of them was just a two-part two-word comment was motorbikes are fine when it comes to the fish, but mountain bikes are harm. I think it wasn't actually spelled that correctly, but essentially that is a obvious frustration because one thing we talked about was the bridges we put up on those things for the event. Every other day out of the year, there's so many users using it, but there's some things that surpass my knowledge of logic somehow of why it even makes sense or doesn't make sense, but it's what we have to adhere to when a permit gets filed. So the thing is, when it comes to, I believe it was Steve making a comment of like, why is it okay for motos to be up there or any bikes or any users on the trails, but then we get kind of like ridiculed for using it and how to build bridges and that stuff that's just the restrictions and the requirements put in place that we adhere to. And so any person could be there at any point, but they were even asking us to like have a tire clean station after the like creek, so you don't have contaminants go to the next creek. Like, I'm not shitting you. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that you have to deal with when it comes down to this. So it's tough. Yeah. So from it could be like a boat launch, where you launch off the little. But another question that came in was from incorporating. We covered it earlier, so I think they just didn't tune in early, but it was covering the doing the new trails in the canyon, so Sweetwater, Bruin Trail, Daniels Pass. We mapped out a course as of this morning that included variations of those courses that included that stuff, and that is something we can use.
All of it.
All of it.
Use it all.
Fair game. So that will be something. Hopefully, we get some precipitation because they opened it in the driest season. It's like, so if you know me, I'm going to advocate for using whatever we can, and so all the hurdles aside, we're trying to push through getting access through some of the parks. Even one thing we discussed was outbound, instead of climbing Gold Camp and doing high drives, if we can go in and out of private property on ladders to go through the edge of Stratton and see if we can push that through to get it approved. It's very, very iffy. But we have to put it out there to see if it's in consideration. It's never been approved, but the restrictions don't say anything about actual. It's not a full inch deep tops, but we're pushing for every inch, every mile, that kind of stuff that we can.
It's about 8 o'clock, so if there's 2 more people that want to ask a question, two more questions, and then I'll be hanging out. Daniel will be hanging out. We can have one-on-one conversations too. Go ahead.
So this is maybe more of a comment than a question. I'm not a huge fan of the Jeep roads, dirt roads. I thought Stupid was a little hard on the bike at shows. I just want to urge you to continue, and you've already done a great job of making sure that anybody who chooses to ride a bike is sorry.
Yeah, I like mountain biking, so we're going to choose wisely.
The whole idea behind Stupid is keep you honest. I think we kept some people honest that day.
Same thing with Palmer. Like, that's a place where it keeps you honest too. I want some technicality to it, so not necessarily my goal is to keep it safe because nobody wants to have like EMG response on everything, but technicality, space with some people where you can get your wits about you and go again. That was my biggest concern with Mount Herman in that stage last year was the hardest section is last. After you go up to altitude, you do spin yourself and you're fatigued at the end. My concern was if it gets sloppy, that's the spot where it's happening. That's probably where some of the bad experience for some people was right at the end. But also, if they persevered, and there were a lot of the responses. I was happy I did it and finished it. So it's a double-edged sword from that standpoint.
To be clear, though, we've actually built these courses just to keep people thinking about what bike they want to choose. And we want people to actually have to think about that. And that's part of how we built this. Sure. There's easy gravel roads on a lot of this. You wish you could ride something about 5 pounds lighter, but as you said, if someone actually tries to do that, they are going to pay later, and that's kind of how we built these. But we've also made it a rule. It's like if you want to switch bikes between days, that's fine. Most people won't. Most people will find, I guess a lightweight cross-country bike is probably the best tool in most situations. Or a trail bike if you like it up a little bit and don't mind carrying it up the hill a little bit. But we want to keep people a little bit on their toes for that. One more? Yeah.
I'll back you up on the park stage. I do appreciate the way it's laid out. You overlay the park pretty well, and I use it as a gauge of my fitness from year to year. So I appreciate the line on the same stage for the prologue, and look forward to seeing some of the things pass. So I'm going to give us any candy use in the future.
Good. Thanks for the feedback. We like that feedback too. Like, not always necessarily like what can we do better. Like, sometimes we need to hear like what is good and needs to stick.
Yeah.
Because that recurrence to me, like a lot of events I've done, there's memorable pieces in that, or a ton of athletes I coach that can talk about certain aspects of courses that draw them back. And that's the thing, we need to key in on those aspects that were the event or the courses do well, but also grow on the aspects of more of those experiences to make sure that people are continually coming back. I know personally one thing that some people disclosed to me was if it's gravel events that's a little bit of single track, why would I come back and back and do this again? So I'm looking at it from that perspective. What would make me do this as a local that lives here as well, like adding new access, changing things up a little bit, but also keeping some of the fun factors there as well that people or if people are saying, oh, I'm going to bring my buddy in from Tennessee and how to do this, that it's not changed so much that they're like, well, this is totally different from what I did last year. It's a smack in the face. So somewhat of a recurring standard. So.
All right, thank you so much. I'll be hanging out. Daniel will be hanging out. We can talk to you a little bit. Two things before we roll out, though. Number one last reminder, put your email address down if you have any interest in helping. We could use all the help we can. It's an event that we hope the whole community can rally behind. Number two, come hang out and talk to Molly and get some swag from RockShox is the other thing. And we appreciate all of you coming out tonight. Please engage. Everyone's got my email. Don't hesitate to send me a note, Daniel a note, and appreciate you guys engaging with the event. Really appreciate it. Good night.
If you happen to have any issues with your card and getting another beer, please go see Chris with the orange beanie back there. She's going to take care of you.
Molly.
I'm going to do that.